Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 9th episode, can you believe it or not, of Let's Talk Automotive. Thank you very much for joining us. Peter Viljoen joining me tonight again. Peter is an expert in everything automotive, and we value your information and everything that you bring to the show. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm doing very well. Thank you very much, Fani. Great to be back.
Awesome. So tonight, guys, we are talking everything trade-in. So for you to understand what the show is about, it's all about you, the consumer. We want to give you a little bit of insight and information with regards to the automotive industry. Educate, I think.
Yeah, and I think deal with one of the real anxieties that customers face during the sales process.
Correct.
I think the trade-in is one of the areas where customers are perhaps the least trusting in terms of whether they're getting the correct deal or the best value for money for their vehicle. And I thought maybe good opportunity for us to settle perhaps some old housewives' tales that are going around and go through the trade-in process.
Absolutely. So as you can gather, tonight we're talking everything trade-in. When it comes to the point of buying a new vehicle and trading in the old vehicle, and we're going to talk about the trade-in process. We're going to talk about the difference between trade-in value and what the actual offer is, what they give you. We're going to talk about the appraisal, how that process works. We're going to talk about where these guys pull out the prices that they give you, the sources of the evaluation and the prices. We're going to talk about depreciation, how that vehicle depreciates over time, and how you must factor that into this whole process. We're going to talk about resale value and if it's important or not. And then lastly, what is the pros and cons versus selling the vehicle privately or actually trading it in. So when we talk used cars and when we talk trade-ins, there's a bit of a stigma.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that, you know, when
look at that. That's what most people think when it comes to used car stands. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, my mother thought I was that when I first joined the motor industry. So,
okay, but it's not like that. It's definitely not like that anymore. It's more a little bit like this. There you go. That's more like it. Don't you agree, Pete?
No, for sure. And I think that's perhaps one of the most frustrating parts of being part of the motor industry is you always associated and aligned with the previous picture.
Yes.
You know, you're this dodgy used car sales guy. But actually, the franchise dealerships in particular are really made up of a whole lot of professionals that are serious about business. Yes. and they've got good business ethics.
Awesome.
So, and I think tonight perhaps we will be able to illustrate that a bit more clearly.
Absolutely. All right, so let's dive in, Pete. Let's talk about we're going to talk about the trading process. So let's jump into that and how that whole process works.
Okay, so I think that one of the first things that I want to talk about is the difference between a trade-in value and the offer that you finally receive from the dealership. So when it comes to the trade-in value, that is the value of your vehicle anywhere in the country. So if you had to take a view of the value of your vehicle anywhere in the country, it would be a particular value.
Yes.
In terms of the difference between the value and the offer is really dependent on what is the appetite of the dealership in terms of how much they're prepared to over-allow on a particular deal and what their rebates are that they have on offer. So a vehicle might be worth, for example, 100,000 Rand as a trade-in value, but you might get offered 150,000 Rand.
I understand.
And I think where this is really important to understand is if you're shopping between different brands. So different brands have different offers at any given point in time that might explain the difference between one dealership's trade-in offer versus another dealership's trade-in offer.
All right. So let's talk about that. Why is there a difference between if I go to dealer A and B, why do they offer me different prices for my trading?
So as we spoke about last week, the dealerships and the OEMs have some serious rebates on offer, and it's that rebate that enables the dealership to offer you perhaps more for a vehicle than they would traditionally have offered based on its trade-in value.
Sure. Okay, so before we carry on, I just want to say to the guys at home, if you have any questions with regards to trade-ins, on our FS Media Facebook page. We're checking out the comments there. Unfortunately, we are going out on more platforms. And by the way, welcome to our viewers on raceday.tv and also to the viewers on JAC Westrand's Facebook page that's joining us tonight. So unfortunately, we won't be able to look at the comments on those pages, but we'll be able to look at the comments on FS Media. So if you have any questions with regards to trading in the vehicle, please pop it in the comments and we'll discuss it as we go along. Right, Pete, what is the next thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to tradings?
So part of the trade-in process, and a very key part of the trade-in process, is the vehicle appraisal. And this is where a dealership takes a serious look at the condition of the vehicle and their ability to then resell it. And I always use the example of if you had a diamond ring and you had to take that diamond ring into a jeweler and ask the jeweler for an appraisal, and he took it and he just went, wiped it on his shirt and said, well, you know, that's worth 50,000 Rand. What are you going to be thinking about the jeweler's appraisal?
Yes.
And obviously it's going to be, well, you don't trust it. And I think that the same is true for when you take your vehicle into a dealership for an appraisal. Certainly our expectation is that that dealer puts in the effort to make sure that they do a proper check on the condition of the vehicle.
So when we stop at the dealership, I've seen a couple of things. Sometimes it's 5 minutes away. The guy takes the car and he's away for 5 minutes and he comes back and he gives me a price. And then other times I've seen guys busy for 2 hours and I don't get a price. They'll get back to me with a price. Explain to me, what is the process? Do they actually do paperwork? What do they actually do when they take my car for an evaluation?
Yeah, the fact that the one dealership takes 2 hours, for example, to do an appraisal really talks to the quality of the work that they're doing there.
Okay.
And there certainly is some paperwork. So Fritz can put up the first sheet we've got here. This is a typical example of a vehicle appraisal sheet. And typically what the dealership will do is they'll start to look at the condition of the vehicle. So they'll take down your basic details, VIN number and whether you're the original owner, etc., etc. Whether you've got a spare key, whether your service book is there or not, because those kind of things can make a major impact. I mean, a spare key these days can cost you 20,000 Rand.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you've got to make sure that that spare key is there. The odometer reading is quite important. What we do experience sometimes is customers will bring in their vehicle prior to going on their last great trek of a holiday. Yes. And they'll add about 5,000 or 10,000 kilometers before it comes back. So
that,
you know, good paperwork makes good friends at the end of the day. And the very important part is when we come to the actual condition of the vehicle. So there's two sections to the appraisal sheet in general. The first looks at the exterior condition of the vehicle, and what the dealership will do typically is take you around the vehicle and highlight some of the areas that perhaps need to be touched up and repaired. And the good dealers will also use an interior version of this, so they'll look at the interior of the vehicle and mark off any areas that perhaps need to be repaired. And this is important because at the end of the day, your trade-in is going to be sold to another deserving customer.
Correct.
And that customer has expectations about the condition of the vehicle, and so the dealership has to get that vehicle into that condition.
Sure. Okay, so they've run through this process. Now, I have a question with regards to this. When I take my vehicle in for this evaluation, I'm in the process of buying a car and I want to trade in my vehicle and follow that process. What do you think? Is it important that, well, what can I do to get the most bang for my buck? How much the best offer for my car? Do I take it for a valet? Do I fix all the dings and dangs and put on new tires before I take it in to get a price on the vehicle?
I think that there's no sense in the consumer themselves fixing up any of the dings and the scratches and any of the reconditioning work that needs to be done. And the simple reason for that is that the dealership can achieve all those particular fixes at a much lower rate than a retail customer would be able to. So I think the trick really is just to make sure your vehicle is nice and clean and that you've hopefully looked after the vehicle throughout the duration that you've had it. But there's absolutely no sense in trying to repair the vehicle yourself. It'll cost you almost double what it would cost a dealership.
But in the same breath, just getting the car clean will make a big impression, because if the car is like really dirty and dangy and whatever the case is, the guys will definitely look at the car differently.
Yeah, and I mean, I always use I always joke with my customers sometimes when I say to them, you know, in the instance where they're trading a vehicle in, I'm now their customer.
Correct.
You know, they've got to do a selling job on me to kind of motivate me to pay more for the vehicle.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got a guest on the line. Gideon du Plessis, the dealer principal of JAC Westrands, on the line with us tonight. Hello, Gideon du Plessis, how are you doing?
Hello, Fanny Scholes and Peter.
How's it going? How are you doing?
Yeah, good, man, good.
Okay, so everything back to normal in the retail industry, in the motor industry. Are you guys fully functional and operating as per normal? Or is there still limitations to what you're doing?
Yeah, no, we back to normal. Business is a bit slow, but I think the biggest impact at the moment is the banks are still very risk averse.
Okay.
So, you know, we're struggling with the finance deals.
Okay.
But, you know, the banks also can't make money if they don't loan out. Somehow they got to, you know, come to some sort of compromise.
Sure, absolutely. Gideon, we're talking trade-ins tonight. Okay, so before we carry on, I think, you know, you've been in the industry for years and years and have dealt with a lot of different brands and manufacturers over the years. When it comes to used vehicles, what is the one thing that sort of sticks out in your head when it comes to trading in the vehicle? What's important and what's not important?
Well, I think honesty is the most important thing from both sides. You know, there's opposing objectives. The customer wants to have as much money for the car as possible, and the dealer wants to validate his price. You know, I can't give you 100,000 rand, but I can give you 90,000 rand because we've got to do a service of 5,000, and we've got to put tires, etc., etc. So I think that's the thing that's most important.
I completely agree. Because as much as consumers have the stigma when it comes to trading in the vehicle and dealing with dealerships and used car salespeople and that whole stigma that you know, they scallum and whatever the case is. You know, in my experience over the years, we've dealt with a lot of scallum customers as well. You know, customers that don't divulge certain information on the vehicle and get away with it. So it works both ways. Honesty is, I believe, very important. And the Consumer Protection Act also, at this moment, you know, looks after both the dealership and the customer.
Yeah, and I think it's a valid point that Gideon's making. I'll be perhaps a little bit kinder to the customers and say they're not being scallum, but maybe they're just not offering the information that they should be. And
yes,
it's really incumbent on us as operators to ask the
right
questions that are required. Yeah,
absolutely. Gideon, a question to both of you guys. When it comes to evaluating the vehicle, why does it take so long to get an evaluation done at certain dealerships? I don't know what the process is that you guys follow at JAC Westrands, but why does it take so long to actually get to a point where you give me an offer on the car?
Yeah, funny, you know, it's actually quite a, you know, if you look at a vehicle, it's quite a complex machinery, you know, that's there in front of you. There's there could be mechanical problems, electrical problems that you might not be aware of. And then obviously the physical side of it, you know, you've got to look closely if the vehicle is at accident damage. You know, we pride ourselves that we will not sell a car that's been in an accident. So
yes,
one's got to make sure, and it doesn't scream accident. You've got to look for overspray and alignment of panels, etc., etc. So that takes time. And then also, you know, we always like to put the vehicle on lift in the workshop, just to go underneath. You know, you can look at the vehicle from the side and so forth. But maybe the customer's driven over a pavement and half the suspension is gone.
yes.
So, you know, it's quite a process. And then there's a test drive as well. You know, like a customer would like to drive the car that he is interested in buying for a test drive. And as me being now the customer, like Peter referred to earlier,
Yes.
I also want to test drive the vehicle that I'm buying.
Yes.
So all in all, it's quite a it's quite a story to trading in there.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to what Gideon's saying, believe it or not, a dealership that trades in a vehicle, that's a serious investment for that dealership, and it's fraught with risk as well. You could end up trading in a vehicle that a month or two later the engine blows, and that now wipes out any profit and more. And I think the other thing that's critical is that the techniques to repair vehicles after damage has become so good that it is incredibly difficult to pick up accident damage at the best of times. So I think that the more time you spend, you're actually doing your future customer a bit more justice, in that you've done the best of your ability to make sure that the vehicle that you're providing them is actually one that you've really, really checked out properly.
Okay, while I have Gideon on the line, and we have this nice forum with all of this experience, I think we're probably looking at about 300 years worth of experience between just the two of you.
Speak for yourself.
440, yeah.
So when it comes to used vehicles, a lot of the vehicles that comes in for an evaluation actually does not end up on the used floor on the dealership and goes to a trader or an auction or something like that. Let's talk about auctions and buying vehicles on auctions. What is your feeling, Gideon, about buying a used vehicle at auctions?
Look, it's sort of a roll of a dice, because auctions sell foot stewards. In other words, you haven't got recourse on the seller. So if you buy a vehicle, usually the prices are quite good. So you might pay a lower price than you would at a dealer. However, there's no recourse. So if something goes wrong, guys are going to say to you, sorry, you bid the vehicle and you to food stewards. So there's pros and cons. If you look at the vehicle, depending what vehicle types you're dealing with, but for instance, our shop, our average selling price is about 250,000 rand. So it's a lot of money. I'd rather spend 10,000 rand more and get peace of mind that I know that if something goes wrong, because let's face it, it's man-made. Vehicles, so things can go wrong, but at least I've got a dealer that I can go to sort out my problems for me. So
you've raised a very important very important point there, and that's something that I think a lot of people forget about. Vehicles sold on reputable used vehicle floors go through a 20 point or a 101 or a whatever they call it, but it goes through a quality check procedure to make sure that vehicle conforms.
Yeah, there's a quality gate. I think there's certainly a lot more accountability from a dealership's perspective if things go wrong. I'd like to add maybe to the auction part as well, and that is people mustn't forget that auctioneers are professionals, and their job is to try and get the highest price possible.
Yes.
And sometimes I've actually been amazed when I've been attending auctions at the prices that people ultimately end up paying for vehicles, which way exceeds actually what you would have got it from a dealership.
Correct.
So people get into this, they get whipped up into this euphoria state. They think they're getting a good deal, and by the time they've wiped their eyes from the proverbial, they've actually paid a lot more. And now they have no accountability and no recourse.
Okay, so last question that I have for both of you guys on the panel tonight. Before we get to a very anticipated guessing the car game tonight with Gideon and Peter going up against each other, before we get to that very entertaining segment in the program, I want to ask you a question. So I've had this question. I've traded in my car with a dealership. I was offered X amount for the vehicle. A week later, I drive past the dealership and I see my car on the used car floor, and the guys have put it on the floor up for sale at a massive amount more than what they offered me the car, or what they offered me for the trading value. How does that work? Surely that's not fair.
Well, at the end of the day, the way I explain it to customers is pretty simple. A dealership is a business, and any business, even the businesses that customers are involved with, the essence of a business is to buy low, sell high. And as I've explained verbatim to a lot of customers, there's a lot of risk that the dealership absorbs when they purchase that vehicle. And with risk comes reward. So we don't know if we've purchased that vehicle for the wrong price, for example, and now we sit with that vehicle on our showroom floor for months on end. We're having to pay the interest bill on it because we've borrowed money to pay for that vehicle. We don't know what's going to happen to that vehicle from a reliability point of view that we assume responsibility for. And at the end of the day, we're providing a service to the customer in terms of taking their vehicle in and selling it on their behalf at the end of the day for them and assuming all that risk. So Gideon, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
100%, I agree with you, Peter. I think, one's got to realize that the dealership's going to put a profit on the vehicle. And then obviously the reconditioning that's been done is also going to inflate the price. But I think it's also, it depends on your marketing strategy. Some guys put the price up quite high because they negotiate. Somebody comes in on the vehicle and you say, you know what, if you take it today, I'll give you 10,000 rand off the price of the vehicle. So, you got to delve a bit deeper. It's, it depends on the strategy that the dealers follow.
Okay, last comment on that. I want to throw it to you guys. Both of you have been in the motor industry, in the retail side. You've both been in the dealer principal seat for quite some time. Have you ever had to go into a dealership and had to write back money or write off money on used cars?
Plenty.
Well, and that's a great point, actually, at the end of the day. I think that the asset test for customers really revolves around, are dealers making more money than is fair on their used car departments? Yes. And the answer is simply no. They're making a fair profit, but ultimately there's a lot of times where as a dealer principal I'd have to go back and write back literally millions to get the vehicles that I've overpaid for to stand in correctly. So it swings and roundabouts. On some vehicles we do make some good money on, and that's the art of business. But on the other hand, there's a lot of examples where we don't make money and we in fact lose money,
sure,
where we've been too aggressive. Yeah.
Gideon, yourself, how do you experience that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's the thing is what's very important as well is people forget that it's not an exact science. The Meader McGruder book, The Trade and Retail Value, it's purely an indication of what the vehicle's worth. And a lot of this business is done on gut feel as well. What must I buy? What can I sell? And sometimes the market just goes the other way. And you sit with a car that's costing you interest every month, and the cost just melts. It's not stagnant. So, it's risky business. But, that's why the seasoned operators, they know these things and they make allowance for that. But it's not an easy game, man.
Not for sure.
Okay, I think the time has come to have some fun. It's been all serious and we're talking about trade-ins tonight and we're giving the customers and the consumers out there some valuable information and insights into the process of trading in the vehicle. But tonight's highlight for me is seeing you guys go head to head with guessing the car game. And we'll have to get a better name for this, Fritz. We'll have to get a better name for this. But anyway, it's guessing the car game. The rules are you have to shout out your name. Okay? You have to shout out your name. If you don't shout out your name, you're disqualified. You had a problem last week.
I had a problem last week. So I can barely remember my own name.
Don't shout out the car's name, your name. Just say again, Gideon.
Did we get a test run?
No. There's six slides. We zoom in on the car. You have to guess what it is. Good luck, gentlemen. Here's the first one. Let's see who gets this first.
Oh my head.
My goodness. I don't even...
It hasn't got mags on, that I can tell you.
Can I give you I'll give you a tip. This is 6 of the top 10 vehicles sold in South Africa in 2019.
Nissan NP200. Peter, Nissan NP200.
Peter gets it. Let's see, Fritz. It's a Nissan NP200. Gideon.
Well done.
Sorry, man. You won down to Peter. Remember to shout your name. Let's look at the next one.
No, but Peter didn't shout his name. He's disqualified.
No, he did eventually. All right, let's look at the next one. What's this?
Peter, Polo.
Peter.
Peter, Polo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter's got it very quickly on the fingers. Volkswagen, Polo, Vivo. Well done. He's 2 up, Gideon. I hope you get the next one. Let's get the next one. Oh my goodness, what is this?
It's not. Yeah.
You must give your
Gideon
name.
Fiat.
Gideon. No, it's not a Fiat, Gideon.
Peter, I would say that is a JAC or a Toyota Hilux.
Peter has got it right.
Yeah.
3 up, Toyota Hilux. The number 1 selling vehicle in South Africa last year. Come on, Gideon, you 3 down. You've got a chance to level up the scores. Guys at home, if you have a chance, you can also play along and comment your answers in the comments below. Let's look at the next one.
Peter, Ford Ranger.
Peter is on a roll tonight. Let's see if that's right. The Ford Ranger. Well done, Pete. Well done, Peter. And I promise you, Gideon, Peter did not see any of this before we started the game.
Trust me, I've been begging them to give me the
He
answers.
has been begging us. Okay, Gideon, what did you want to say?
My contact lens fell out. And this one as well.
Okay, we've got one more to go. Let's give Gideon a chance to redeem himself with this last one. Let's see if who gets this. Name first. Give me a name.
Come, Gideon. I know the answer. Come on.
Oh, crikey.
Can I give it a shot?
Yes.
Peter, go ahead.
Go.
Peter, Isuzu. KB.
Isuzu, the KB Isuzu. Let's see if you're right. Yes, well done. 6 out of 6
Well
tonight.
done.
Have we got one more? Did I get it wrong? Let's see. There's one more apparently. Sorry, Gideon. One more. Last chance to redeem yourself. Oh, yes.
Oh, this is easy.
It was 5 out of 6 so far. What is this, Gideon?
Come, Gideon. This irritates us on a daily basis. Come on.
Well, it must be a Persia.
No.
Okay, Peter, what is it?
This is a high ace.
This is the Toyota Quantum High Ace. Well done, Peter.
Yay!
Gideon, I'm going to give you a point just for shits and giggles.
At least not a mouthwash.
Listen, Gideon, thank you very much for joining us and for your time. Good luck getting back to reality and getting those JACs out the door. I've seen a write-up. Who was the write-up from on the JAC? Who was the write-up? Who's got the JACs for a write-up at the moment, Gideon?
Man. Ignition TV.
Ignition's, and they had a very good write-up on the JAC T8.
Very good write-up, yeah.
Yes.
They voted it the most beautiful bakkie in South Africa at the moment.
Really?
Which is quite something. But yeah.
Well,
and
Gideon,
they're putting it through its pace the next week. So yeah, interesting. But they so far very, very good results.
Awesome.
So Gideon, let me ask you this question. And I currently drive the T6. I'm absolutely incredibly happy with it. So can I organize a good price from you on the T8?
Absolutely.
So when I bring my vehicle in for its trade-in,
Yes.
I'm going to expect you to go through all the hoops and hurdles now that we've discussed and give me a great price.
You always get it great.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Gideon. Thank you very much for joining us and all the best at
Thanks,
JAC
guys.
Westrand.
Cheers, Gideon.
Thank you. Cheers, Zach.
All right, Pete, let's move on. We've got a lot to cover. So the next point on tonight's topic is the sources of the evaluation prices. Where do these dealers get guidelines and sort of an indication of what a car's worth when we trade it in?
Yeah, there's a lot of sources, and I wanted to perhaps take everybody through them one by one and at the same time dispel a few myths about some of them. So the first one and the most utilized one, I suppose, still is the book value.
Yes, book value. I've heard that.
The
a lot.
dealer guide. And I think one of the things that I want to make a comment on with the dealer guide is that customers are often very concerned as to why a dealership will offer them less than what the book is saying.
Yes.
And the simple reason for that is that the information that is contained in that dealer guide is in fact 6 months old.
Okay.
So there's quite a process of submissions and committees that sit and analyze those submissions and eventually make a final judgment on what the trade-in value should be, which is then published. So by the time it gets to a dealership, the book is 5 months old and it's used for a month.
Sure.
And we know that vehicles depreciate at roughly 2% per month.
Yes.
So we already over 10% behind book immediately.
Okay.
And that's before factoring in any things like what's happening in the market currently and all other issues that may play a hand. So
that's not the only guide that they use.
no, it's certainly not.
Okay.
I think we've moved more and more to digital platforms. So there's some companies out there like AutoBid and Bid for Cars, etc., that provide an instantaneous view on what dealers are currently paying for vehicles.
Yes.
My caution with that is that typically we see that the dealers are very conservative in their estimates that they put on these particular websites, and so you're probably going to get even a worse view on what the trade-in value is for the vehicles if you're using a digital platform.
Sure.
Of course, there's the dealership's own experience.
Correct.
Particularly with their own brand. They know what the vehicles are trading for, they know what they've sold similar models for in previous months, and so the dealer can give a view on what the vehicle's worth.
Before you carry on, I actually want to say that it's not always the case that they offer you behind or below trading price or book value for your car. There's some instances where they actually pay more.
Absolutely, and it's a function of the law of supply and demand.
Yeah.
If you've got a vehicle that is highly sought after, that you don't have a lot of stock of course you're going to be a bit more aggressive when you offer the trade-in.
Yes.
At the same time, if a rental company like Avis offloads 2,000 of the same vehicles in 1 month on the market, that's going to flood the market, and therefore the demand is going to be, or the supply is certainly going to be more than the demand, and we're going to be a bit more conservative in terms of the pricing.
Okay. So what's the next step? If the guy's obviously looked at the dealer guide, he's looked at maybe digital platforms, obviously he's got a gut feel about everything, but I've also heard that people phone around for prices. How does that work?
So there's a lot of independent operators, we refer to them as wholesalers, and they independently buy vehicles. It could also be an independent used car lot, for example, that's not a franchise dealership.
Yes.
And typically what the pre-owned manager at a franchise dealership will do is they will phone around their connections, their network, and they'll get a feel from them what their appetite is for a particular model, and if they would perhaps be able to put in an offer that's better than the dealership themselves would be able to put in an offer. So,
and something on that point that I don't think a lot of people realize is that the used car manager, he's putting his kahunas on the block because he's making that price, and ultimately, if that car doesn't sell within a certain amount of days, he gets penalized.
Yeah, he gets penalized. He obviously has to pay interest on that vehicle. The vehicle depreciates on his floor. So it's a very expensive exercise to make sure that you purchase a vehicle at absolutely the best price.
Sure. Okay, so now that we know where they go look for prices and where they get indications, let's talk about depreciation. Why do cars depreciate the way they do?
Yeah, it's the eternal question, I think, on everybody's lips. But I think let's take a few steps back in understanding what provides the backbone for a resale value of a vehicle and what causes a vehicle to depreciate. So the fundamental factor is, in fact, how SARS allows you to depreciate an asset.
Okay.
And SARS provides a table on their website of all sorts of different types of assets, from air conditioners through to aircraft. And each of those has a different allowance in terms of how long you may depreciate a vehicle or an asset over.
Sure.
So to give you some examples, a light aircraft, for example, you're allowed to depreciate over 4 years. Computers, a personal computer, will be 3 years. Delivery vehicles, interestingly enough, is over 4 years, which also explains why a delivery vehicle depreciates and has such poor resale value. It's not only about the usage of the vehicle,
Sure.
it's about how short the time frame is to depreciate that asset. There's other examples, escalators, just out of interest. You've got 20 years to depreciate those. And then my personal favorite for you, given your gymming your gymming insights, spinning equipment.
I'm so glad.
You can depreciate
I can
over 1 year.
depreciate over 1 year.
Yeah,
I'm
so
so
they're
happy to
worth
hear
this
that.
very quickly. So if we go back to that table, you've got 5 years to depreciate a vehicle off your balance sheet. That's 20% per year on average.
Sure.
1.67%, or call it 2% per month. And what's very, very critical for customers to understand that have bought a vehicle is not to sell it too quickly.
Sure.
Because the first year of depreciation on a vehicle is where you take your biggest hit.
Sure.
And the reason for that is not only are you losing the base 20% that SARS allows for the vehicle to depreciate, but you're also losing out on VAT at 15%. So customers are often surprised, and they come in and they say, but my vehicle's still brand new,
Yes.
or it's got very low mileage, but they don't realize that you've depreciated the vehicle by 20%, plus you can't recover that 15% VAT.
Yes.
So at a minimum, you're looking at 35% knock on a vehicle after its first year.
And that also brings to mind a question: when is the right time to then obviously get rid of the car that you have or that you're driving? When's the right time to trade in the vehicle on the next vehicle?
I think there's a couple of factors. The first is and from a customer perspective, your vehicle needs to have equity in it. In other words, the value of your trade-in has got to match what you currently owe on it on finance, if you finance the
Yes.
vehicle. I think the second most important criteria to consider if you're a customer is factors like this mental block of 100,000 kilometers.
Correct.
So try sell your vehicle when it's below 100,000 kilometers, and also try sell the vehicle or trade it in when it's still in its warranty or maintenance plan or service plan. Those are your sweet spots in terms of maximizing the value of the vehicle.
Awesome. Well, we're giving a lot of valuable information to the consumer out there. What's next on our list that we're going to discuss? Resale value when considering a new car.
Yeah, so I think one of the questions that a lot of customers have when they are considering a vehicle and they're doing research on a vehicle is, what is the resale value of the particular model or brand that I'm
Yes.
buying? And I think that perhaps it's something that's misconstrued. If a vehicle has a poor resale value, I should stay away from it. But I've got a case study where I've based on 2 actual models that are in the South African market that show that sometimes resale value is not important at all. So if we look at the 2 models, and as I say, Model A and Model B reflect 2 actual models in the market currently. The first thing we've got to look at is the retail spec adjusted price. And this is a very, very important thing to understand. There's a difference between the retail price of a vehicle, and when we compare it to its competitor, if we had to get both vehicles to the same spec,
Yes.
what would the vehicles cost?
I
So
understand.
in our example that we've got there between A and B, we can see that vehicle B, the spec adjusted price to get it to be equivalent to vehicle A in terms of its spec makes it considerably more
Okay,
expensive.
before we carry on, just explain spec to everybody out there. We're talking, is it extras?
Yeah, extras and options. So some manufacturers, their marketing strategy is to bring in a base vehicle that doesn't have many standardized options on them.
Okay.
Other manufacturers take the gamble of pre-speccing those vehicles to very high levels of standard execution.
Okay, awesome. Let's move on to the next point there.
All right, so we've got the 2 models there. If we go to the second part there, we can see we're 130,000 Rand difference already on that vehicle. Now what I've done is I've taken Model A and I've approached it with a very, very aggressive annual depreciation. It's almost a worst case scenario. I don't think I've ever seen actually depreciation that occurs like this, but nonetheless, for the sake of this exercise, it'll work. So if we depreciate after the first year 35%, the value is going to be at 481,000. And as we go down the list, you'll see that by year 4, this particular vehicle will be worth 230,000 as a trade-in. All right, so we've lost 509,000 Rand. It's a huge hit to take on a vehicle. And at that point, a customer would probably be saying to themselves, I'm not going to look at this vehicle.
Yeah.
They'll look at Model B. But let's go through the same exercise, but this time we're going to be very, very light on the depreciation. So we're going to take our 35% knock on the first year, as all cars do.
Yes.
And then we're going to depreciate very, very
20%,
slowly. So
15%, and 10% in the 4th year.
Very light depreciation. So at the end, the car's worth 346,000. But have a look at this. you've actually lost 523,000 Rand. So in Rand terms, you've already lost.
Yes.
I think it's about 14,000 Rand difference in terms of the depreciation. Yeah. Now, if we add that you've paid both a premium up front for that vehicle of 130,000 Rand,
yes,
plus the 14,000 Rand depreciation, you've actually lost 144,000 Rand buying a vehicle that you as the customer would have perceived to have had a better resale value.
Sure.
And I think that's a calculation that is worthwhile for customers to go through to see if they really are losing by buying a vehicle that has a perceived poor resale value.
Awesome. So I think we've run through everything, Pete, very quickly. Obviously, we can sit here and talk for another 3 hours, but I think we've touched on the very important points that the guys need to look at. So listen, that's what we're here for. We're here to give the consumers some tips and some insights with regards to the back end of the automotive industry. I want to say to everybody that joined us online, I see Henkie Spannenberg, he had a field day. He was awesome with the guessing game. He had Quantum and Isuzu, he was Ranger, he had everything correct. Well done, Henkie Spannenberg. Thanks for joining us. Dean Leview's online and watching. Gideon has actually joined us after his interview. He's watching. Shai Lazarus has joined us. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us online. We hope that you've taken away some informative and valuable information with regards to trading in your vehicle. Any last words from you, Pete?
Yeah, look, I think that's one of the things that maybe is obvious for a customer if they feel like they're not getting a fair trade-in is the option of perhaps selling the vehicle themselves privately.
Yes, very important. We didn't touch on that. Let's talk about that very quickly.
Yeah, so I think we've got to have a look at the pros and cons. The pro for selling your vehicle privately, you get a better price. But that's where it stops. And I think there's more cons to selling a vehicle privately, which again goes back to why it's worthwhile and where the value proposition comes in, the service that the dealership offers you when they in fact take in your vehicle. So the first is risk.
Yes.
And that risk is both from a safety point of view in terms of having unknown people coming either to your house or a business to view these vehicles.
Yes.
And there's also a financial risk that somebody makes a deposit, they send you a proof of payment, you hand over the keys to that person and they drive off and that payment never actually happened. So there's also the question of private finance. When you sell a vehicle privately and the customer at the end of the day or the person you're selling to needs to secure finance for it, it's a much more difficult process to arrange private finance than it is for a dealership.
Correct.
To organize finance through a bank. So it becomes a bit of a process. Then there's also the issue of what happens if you sell this vehicle and the engine falls out.
Yes.
Well, now that responsibility rests with you. And you might not be in a financial position to be able to pay for that.
So with regards to that point, does footstewards, like Gideon mentioned in the auction scenario, can I still sell a car privately, footstewards?
You can.
If I draw up a piece of paper, a contract between me and the buyer? You
can, but then you're going to get less. So you're back to sort of the levels that a dealership would be able to offer you as a trade-in.
I hear you.
So unless your vehicle still is covered by its manufacturer's warranty, of course,
correct,
and then that's not going to be a question. I think the other thing to look at from a disadvantage point of view is time. It takes time to sell a vehicle. We sit with dealerships that have stock on their floors for months and months on end. You as a customer are going to be no different. The competition out there is fierce, believe me. So you're going to spend money on advertising. You're going to take time to sell it. And at the end of the day, by the time you've spent months on this, you might as well have just traded the vehicle in.
Absolutely. Because what people don't realize is that the vehicle actually depreciates every month. So whatever you were offered last month is not the same price that you're going to get when you go back the next month.
Absolutely spot on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're still making repayments if you finance that vehicle. So whatever the value is, if it's 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 Rand a month that you're repaying, every month that you haven't sold your vehicle, you've lost that money.
Absolutely.
And that's why, I say, the dealerships offer a service which they make a profit from if they're able to sell the vehicle at a profit at the end of the day. But believe you me, it's worth all the pain just to simply give the vehicle in as a trade-in.
Agreed. Well, there you go, guys. Thank you very much for everybody joining us for tonight's episode. Next week, we're back at the same time, same place for episode 10 of Let's Talk Automotive. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for everybody on RaceDay.tv that joined us and watched the show, on JAC Westrand's Facebook page, and also on FS Media. We'll see you guys again next week. Cheers. Have a good one.
Cheers.